Part 5. The human body is like a city with 11 gates, where the eternal and unchanging spirit resides. These gates are like entrances, the eyes, ears, nostrils, mouth, navel, and other openings in the body. The spirit, or Atman, is like the ruler of this city. It is beyond birth, death, and human imperfections, so it is not affected by the changes in the physical body. When a person understands and meditates on this Supreme Spirit through thought, they become free from the parts of themselves that cause suffering and grief, ultimately leading to liberation. The Spirit is like the sun in the sky, the air we breathe, the fire in a sacred fire, and even the guest in a house. It exists in every living being, in things greater than humans, in acts of worship, and in the space around us. It is present in everything that comes from water, earth, sacrifice, and mountains. This Spirit is true and great. It is the force that moves our breath, sending it in and out of our bodies. All our senses respect and acknowledge this inner spirit, the divine Atman, residing at the center of our beings. What happens when the spirit, which resides within the body, departs from it? This is what we will discuss. Humans do not solely depend on the breath that comes in and goes out, there is something greater upon which these two breaths rely. Nachiketas, I will now reveal the secret of the eternal Brahman and explain what happens to the self after death. Some individual souls enter the cycle of rebirth to take on physical forms, while others become a part of inanimate objects, depending on their actions and knowledge. The being who remains awake while others sleep, granting desires, is the pure Brahman. This entity is considered immortal, and all worlds depend on it. Nothing exists beyond this supreme being. Similar to how fire, though one, can become different types of flames depending on what it burns, the Atman, the inner self, becomes diverse within living beings based on the forms it inhabits. It also exists beyond these forms. Just like air, though it is one, can manifest differently depending on where it flows, the Atman within all living beings, though one, assumes various roles based on its surroundings. It also exists beyond these boundaries. Just as the sun, which is the eye of the world, remains untainted by impurities it illuminates, the inner self of all living beings remains untouched by the suffering and misery in the world, as it exists beyond it. There is one supreme ruler, the self of all living beings, who makes the one form appear in many ways. The wise individuals who recognize this ruler residing within themselves experience eternal joy, unlike others who do not. This eternal ruler, who is unchanging amid the ever-changing world, fulfills the desires of many. Those who understand and perceive this ruler dwelling within themselves find eternal peace, unlike those who do not. The wise individuals perceive the indescribable and supreme bliss, and they say, "This is the truth." How can I understand this? Does this truth radiate its light independently, or does it shine by reflecting the light of something else? In the realm of this supreme truth, the sun, moon, stars, lightning, and even fire do not shine. When this truth radiates, everything else becomes illuminated by its light. Part 6. This ancient Aswatha tree has its root above and branches below. It is pure, it is Brahman, it is called the immortal. All the worlds are based on it. Nothing exists beyond it. This is indeed the truth. This verse explains the origin of the tree of creation, Samsaravriksha. This tree has its roots in the supreme Brahman and its branches in the material world. These branches represent the dualities of life, like pleasure and pain, birth and death. However, the source of this tree, Brahman, remains eternally pure, unchanging, and free from death. Everything in the universe comes from him, and there is nothing beyond him. Everything in the universe is formed by prana and vibrates with prana. Prana is a powerful force, like a raised thunderbolt. Those who understand this become immortal. Fire burns because of fear of him, the sun shines because of fear of him. Indra, Vayu, and even death, all act because of fear of him. Just as the body cannot function without the soul, nothing in the created world can exist independently of Brahman. All powers, whether great or small, obey his universal laws. If someone fails to understand the Supreme before their physical body perishes, they will be reborn in the material world. As soon as a person attains knowledge of the Supreme, they achieve liberation. However, if they do not realize this before their soul departs from the body, They must take on new bodies and return to the cycle of birth and death until they gain a deeper understanding of the Supreme and their relationship with Him. Just as the body cannot live without the soul, the wise person does not confuse the eternal Atman with the transient aspects of existence. They understand that the fluctuations of the senses and the physical body do not affect the unchanging Atman. The mind is superior to the senses, the intellect is superior to the mind, and the great Atman is superior to the intellect. Beyond the great Atman lies the unmanifest. Beyond the unmanifest exists the all-pervading and imperceptible being, Purusha. By knowing Him, mortals attain liberation and immortality. The Supreme's form is not visible, and He cannot be seen with the eye. He can only be perceived by the heart, intellect, and mind. Those who understand this attain immortality. The Supreme cannot be realized through speech, the mind, or the eye. Only someone who recognizes and acknowledges His existence can understand Him as He is. The wise understand that the Supreme exists in both the visible and invisible worlds. To them, His true nature is revealed, and they can directly perceive His existence. When all desires in the heart cease to exist, mortals become immortal and attain Brahman. When all attachments in the heart are severed, mortals become immortal. Such is the teaching. There are 101 nerves in the heart. One of them penetrates the center of the head, and by ascending through it, one attains immortality. The other 100 nerve pathways lead to different worlds upon departure. The nervous system in the body serves as channels for the mind. The direction the mind takes is influenced by its desires and tendencies. When the mind becomes pure and free from desires, it ascends through the subtle channel at the crown of the head. But if desires persist, the mind follows the other pathways, leading to various realms in accordance with those desires. The Purusha, the inner self, resides within the heart of all living beings, akin to the size of a thumb. Through diligent practice, one should draw him out from the body, much like extracting the inner stalk from a blade of grass. He should be recognized as pure and immortal. Nachiketas, who acquired this wisdom from the ruler of death along with the principles of yoga, freed himself from impurity and death and realized Brahman, the Supreme. The same will be true for anyone who understands the nature of the self. Peace chant. May the Supreme Being protect both of us and be pleased with us. May we gain strength through our studies, and may there be no enmity between us. Om. Peace. 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 Here ends this Upanishad.